Hello and welcome to this week's vlog. I'm Deborah Evans, Chief Executive of LLG, and joining me today we have...
Hannah McGrath, Head of Public Affairs at LLG.
So what have we got to talk about today? Helen, why don't you start?
Thank you, Deborah. I'd like to talk about disrepair because we know that that's a growing concern for our members. In fact, it's been around as a concern for a good few years now, but actually in the last few years, it's got quite critical in respect of really quite aggressive litigation right at the outset, which is effectively ramping up legal costs from the claimant solicitor, which are hugely disproportionate to the amount of actual damages awarded or settlement in negotiation. So LLG issued out a housing disrepair survey a couple of weeks ago in order to start really examining the data in relation to number of housing stock, properties, legal fees and compensation, so we can start comparing. And I would really urge members to complete that disrepair survey. You can find it on the forum. It did go direct to some email boxes. Now, the other big issue at the moment is the case that's looming in the Court of Appeal, which is Churchill and Merthyr Tydfil Council. Now, this started out as a Japanese knotwood claim, but actually what's going to happen is the Court of Appeal are going to give consideration to this doctrine, basically, that parties can't be compelled to mediate. And that's been around since 2004. So it's caused a big stir, lots of interest in it. There's lots of interested parties, the Law Society, the Bar Council. So we're going to be watching that space really, really closely, because what would be a better thing, and lots of local authorities do it, is to push people along the complaint route to be able to remedy it, and therefore avoiding all those legal costs. Because we know that the government legislated for small claims cases that mediation was mandatory. It had to happen. But most of these disrepair cases now end up in the fast track because there are expert fees and there are more costs associated with the claim, I think. So please fill out the survey and we can then consider what it is we might be able to do as an entity to support our membership in respect of disrepair.
Well, thank you, Helen. And that really interests me because I wonder if there's a way to do this differently. In an ideal world, we would want the money to be spent on housing repair and getting housing stock to the standard where it needs to be, rather than, in effect, spending money on claimants' legal costs and damages. Obviously, we'd still want accessibility for justice for those who are in a difficult situation, but it would be fantastic to try and almost eliminate this wasted money that councils are spending on disrepair claims. It's a vicious circle. The more claims, the less money there is to spend on repair. So we'd like to have a think about how things could be done differently. So is this about a new protocol? Is it about an online portal where people can lodge their claims for a much more proportionate fee? There must be something that can be done here. So if you'd like to chip in your thoughts and perhaps work with us on thinking about maybe a new solution, then do get in touch. At LLG, we're always really keen to try and influence the wider sector and just think again about the way that we do things. And there'll always be an opportunity to do this at our governance conference, which is coming in November. There we like to really lead on thought leadership across the sector on various issues. This time we're going to be focusing, for obvious reasons, on Section 114 reports, Section 5 reports, public interest reports, because there's so much to talk about there. So Helen, over to you on that front.
Yeah, I'm really excited about two sessions at the governance conference, Deborah, because the first is a piece of work I've been really heavily involved in, and that's the work we're doing with the Local Government Information Unit and Brown Jacobson, one of our corporate partners, looking at and examining the role of the monitoring officer, because we know from public interest reports and best value interventions that there is an issue around the status of the role of the monitoring officer, whether they're in the room, what tier they sit at. This has been a large piece of work, and there's been lots and lots of roundtables and interviews with a cross-section of local government employees, really. So we're not just talking to MOs, we've been talking to CEOs, we've been talking to all manner of individuals, including parish clerks, about the role of the monitoring officer and how it sits now in the modern public sphere, essentially. And so that necessarily also will look at things like statutory protection, sanctions, but not really focusing on sanctions, but it's in the mix. So the outcome of all of this research work, and it's been going on since the start of the year, will be delivered at the governance conference in November. So we think then we can use that as a platform to move forward and hopefully really scope the role for the benefit of local government. The other work we're doing, and it feeds in really, is a piece of work we're doing with Grant Thornton, Solace, SIPFA, and Alice. I can never quite remember the acronym of that. Deborah, I don't know if you can, but it's a piece of work looking at more governance more broadly and failings in local government and why failings occur in local government. So that incorporates the whole statutory sort of leadership team, but other elements of the way in which local government work. And again, that sits nicely with a piece around the MOs. I should give a really broad overview of what's going on in local government at the moment, because as you know, we're seeing Section 5 reports, 114 reports, and increasing governance failings within local government.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Helen. And we look forward to seeing you all at the governance conference. It's unmissable. So it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.